I've done more than or close to 1 million cold calls in my career. Even after all that, when I started calculating all the money I've made, all the revenue that I've generated, 98% of that revenue has actually been generated through warm referrals. And the bigger the deals are, the more important it is to get walked into a room. When you are not worried about your life financially, you don't have commission breath. It's a psychological advantage. When you think about the seller psychology, if I don't need the deal, I show up very different.
As an executive at Outreach, an executive at Microsoft, I mean, you've got the resume to back up what you're doing out there.
But 2 weeks into it, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm having this like depressive episode. My brain was atrophying. I wasn't being productive. There's a whole go-to-market plan around signals, targeting, cold outbound, cold emails, the best messaging, all of this AI stuff. But if the person behind all of that technology is not someone you want to speak to, that person's not referable. So if I were to start all over again, I would tell you the easy answer and the most simplistic answer is one word.
I'm excited to have you on, Stephen. If any of you guys might not know this, but Stephen and I would say are friends at this point, no question. I mean, when you go out for a night of dessert together, I mean, you're either friends or it's more than friends. So I would say we're friends. But no question, Stephen is one of the best public speakers that I've ever met, that I've ever seen, I would say. The other thing that I'm excited to have him on is, people talk about go to network, people talk about referrals, people talk about how important it is to have a network, and your net worth is your network and all that good stuff. But I've never in my 20+ year career seen anyone that actually walks the walk and talks the talk the way you do. So I'm excited for the audience to be able to hear more about this journey that's made you so successful at referrals and warm intros. And I know you're writing a book, so I want to hear all about that. And then I want to hear about how your retirement has been going, or your move to W-2 back into running your own thing. So thanks for being on, man.
First and foremost, thank you for the kind introduction. I'll pay you later with a lot of referrals, and I'll send a ton of business your way. It's interesting because I think yesterday you texted me and you said, you are the busiest person I know that doesn't have a job. And it is interesting because I'm like, there's always something going on. And once you leave corporate, and again, I tried to retire. I genuinely tried.
Yeah.
Good Lord, it's boring if you are used to being productive and you have this incessant need to feel like you're contributing. And I think a lot of people listening probably understand that.
Sure.
Many of us are just geared toward productivity, contribution, that sort of thing. But that
hasn't been easy.
No, it absolutely hasn't. And I even think that I picked up on the word success, and I thought you were going in a different direction. I know you said specifically referrals. I still feel like I'm in the middle of it, like constantly growing. And I've been on this journey of trying not to compare. I think both of us have talked a lot in our own conversations about social media and all these things out there that allow us, and probably just unduly so, put us in this comparison game.
Sure.
But the truth of the matter is we're all successful in our own right. And I do believe to a certain extent we're all where we're supposed to be. It's kind of like that Thor. You're like, well, where did Thor come from? There's a scene in Thor where
Quick turn to Marvel, or is this DC? I'm sorry, I'm not.
You know that scene in Thor where his mom is like, no one's where they're supposed to be. Like the very grammar of that statement tells us, yeah, we're not supposed to be there. The word's supposed to be. Like, no one's where they're supposed to be.
No, that makes sense. So, I'm sure most of the time when you get interviewed, people really start with like your resume, and I think because you and I have been so close, I didn't think to touch on it, but obviously as an executive at Outreach, an executive at Microsoft, I mean, you've got the resume to back up, what you're doing out there solo today, which is really impressive. But let me ask you before we get into all of that, what do you think the hardest part about what you're doing today is?
Oh, that is such a great question, but it's also a very simple and a very easy answer. When you are in corporate, when you are in sales, any sort of go-to-market position for a corporate company, you're actually typically selling a product or service that is outside yourself.
Okay.
Now, people will say you're really selling yourself, and what buyers are buying is you. That is true, but the actual payment is in exchange for a service or product that usually is not you directly.
Right.
Unless you're in professional services and whatnot. But even then, you're tied to a bigger company and you're sort of a cog in a wheel. The hardest thing I've ever done so far, and I don't know if it's hard because I've never done this and this is my first foray into this, I am truly selling myself. Because as a speaker, as a revenue strategist, selling expertise, I am literally selling me, and it is different. And
Okay.
I've owned several companies. I've owned a lot of companies as an entrepreneur in my experience, but even my real estate investment companies. Technically, what I'm selling is capital. I'm selling a tangible real estate, a multifamily project, something of that nature. But when I have to now think about what's my own value, it's not easy. And
Right.
the truth is, you're putting yourself on the line, and it's been a learning experience to say the least.
Yeah, I think when I hear you say that, it sounds to me like you're analyzing a lot, like like you're thinking
Yeah.
about so many pieces of it. Even your answer is like, people say you're selling yourself at every role, but this is very different because you're actually selling yourself. It tells me that you've really thought about this deeply already.
Oh yeah.
Which means you've struggled with it a little bit, which I think is cool to hear, because most people, especially when you're following people online, and there's all these people that are independent and running their own business, and they say CEO and founder in their title, and a lot of times it's kind of like a braggadocious type of experience on social media, right? You rarely hear the wins, or sorry, the losses, the learnings from the losses, but you're in that stage now where you're not losing, you're winning. I know. I talked to you on the phone. You're flying all over the country. You're speaking. You're doing it, but you're already starting to reflect on some of the challenges around it, which is interesting. Let's rewind. What do you do right now, like day to day? Someone who's not listening, they're like, this guy. Is he retired? Is he not retired? We just jumped right in. But what do you do on a day-to-day basis? Like, what is the product other than Stephen Oommen?
Well, those are two different questions. What's the product versus what I do day to day? What I do day to day is play with my kids a lot. That was actually the intent of leaving corporate, to be a family man.
Okay.
However, I would tell you the reason I'm able to play with my kids so much and be around and be a father for them and be a family man is actually because of the product/service that I represent to different companies, industry events, and whatnot. And that's this go-to-network mindset, this idea that who we are needs to be referable first and foremost for us to be able to get referrals. There's so many sellers out there. There's a whole go-to-market plan around signals, targeting, cold outbound, cold emails, the best messaging, all of this AI stuff. And there's this realm where I utilize that for all of those things. But if the person behind all of that technology is not someone you want to speak to, that person's not referable.
Right.
I think you have taken at least 2 or 3 meetings with people that I have set you up with, and you will take those meetings because it's me, and
Yeah.
you will tell me, hey, Stephen, you keep setting me up with people that want to sell me stuff,
Right.
but you take those meetings, and I know it's somewhat of a facetious response, but that is proof in the pudding that as a VP of sales, you get hit up a lot and you say no a lot, but 100% of the people that I have referred you to, you've at least taken a conversation with
Right.
to have that initial conversation.
Right.
And so having people that are referable, everybody that's listening, if you're a sales leader, if your people are not referable, it only takes it so far. You can get in the room, but what I do is I try to help people get to the final revenue number, and that revenue, the future of revenue, starts with referability.
No, and that makes a lot of sense to me. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about go-to-network strategy over the past couple of years. I'm bullish on it, right? I probably said this multiple times on multiple podcasts, but the first hire that I made, 3 years ago when I got into my first VP role was a head of partnerships for that exact reason. I believed in the go-to-network strategy more than I did, more than I believed in the future of it more than I did the future of cold outbound as an answer. So you're flying all over the place. Are you actually flying in and teaching this stuff yet? Or are you teaching, just in general, like sales? Like, where is most of your time? Like, how do you make money today?
Yeah. How do I make money? All right. So the active income comes from keynote speaking, from
Okay.
sales trainings. And so it's a combination of all things sales. The hyper niche is, yes, it is referrals. And there's different stages of, like, all the different stages of a sales process requires referrals. Even if you think the end stage where most people hit up on references, the word refer is in references. But the whole point is whether you're trying to get into an account, whether you have a stuck deal and you need other relationships to drive the deal forward, so deal velocity, or you're trying to get it over the line, you're in negotiations and you need the right people and you need access to the right people that have the influence and authority to get the deal done. It doesn't matter what stage of the process you're in, the topic still is relevant. But I do trainings on all things sales as well. So prospecting, how to write an email. I am a big believer that everything works, nothing doesn't. So I would never give up on cold outbound, for an example.
Right.
I just wouldn't start with it.
Got it. I'm curious, like it wasn't that long ago that you were in your W-2. So, you've seen the changes with the way that buyers show up today. You've seen the impact of AI. I believe you and I both are aligned that sales is changing. I guess what do you see as like the biggest change right now? And if someone's listening that's just got into an SDR role and they're like, man, these guys seem to have tons of experience. I want to be retired at whatever age Stephen is. He looks like he's young or not necessarily like grinding on the phones every day. Like, I want to be in that role. Knowing what you know now, what would you recommend, or like, what would you say, hey, this is what's happening. Here's what I would recommend to do to someone that's listening.
Yeah. Oh man, this is such a loaded answer, and it's not the answer that you were probably thinking about, but let me break it up into 2 to 3 components. The first part about retiring early, getting to a certain space in your life, I would tell you the easy answer and the most simplistic answer is one word: money. Now, what do I mean by that? At a very young age, most sellers get into sales because they hear you can make a lot of money. And so if they are making a lot of money, most people tend to spend the money instead of saving, investing. So if I were to start all over again, I would have saved more, invested more. I got lucky midway to find some mentors, and that's what enabled me to invest the right way. The reason that matters so much in the business world and just in life in general is when you are not worried about your life financially, you don't have commission breath. It's a psychological advantage. And I know you believe so much in sales psychology, but when you think about the seller psychology, if I don't need the deal,
right,
I show up very different. So that's stage one, or not even stage one. That is one segment that I would tell any person initially getting into sales. Make sure you are financially astute so you don't have to psychologically be in need of the commission, and you show up from a place of power. And if you know that your product or service is there to help the client, then obviously it's going to be a much different conversation, which is a segue into that second part, which is I actually don't believe sales has changed / buyer psychology has changed over time. We are now codifying it or codifying it, depending on how you pronounce it, and giving names to different types. But what I do think is the way access is happening is changing.
Sure.
Back in the day, you would walk, by foot from town to town. Then you had horses, buggies, cars, phones. Now it's AI. It doesn't matter. But the way we access information through technology, that has changed.
Right.
So human beings have always been fearful of something they don't know. They usually, start to have a little bit of risk aversion, things of that nature. And maybe that part is heightened a little bit with certain types of modalities. Like, again, when the phone rings and you don't know the number, there's a heightened sense of fear.
Right.
When phones first came out, it was an excitement. Like, that's the kind of stuff that changed. I mean, we all remember when we were young and the phone rang at the house, you and your brothers and sisters would run to the phone like it was this big event. No, I'm getting the phone. No, I'm getting the phone. It was exciting. Now, how often are people answering the phone or excited to answer the phone? So that's what I mean by access, I believe, has changed. But sales and buyer psychology, I actually don't think has changed that much over the years.
Let me challenge you a little bit there. So, because I think you're right in terms of the access. However, it's like, you hear that it's difficult for an 18, 19-year-old superstar in the NBA or an actor or actress. It's difficult for them to maintain like a real monogamous relationship, as an example, because they have so many options, right? So, maybe that game hasn't changed, but it changes them a little bit, right? And I think what's happening now is buyers are showing up with all the options in the world, access to all the options in the world, and it changes the leverage game a little bit, right? If I show up to every conversation with so much access and so much education, it's almost like now the leverage game has switched a little bit where, I have more leverage, right, as a customer. The other thing is there's so much access to all the mistakes, right? Like the bad reviews that are out there, the Reddit groups, right? The TikToks, like all of this where it's saying, hey, be careful of this, right? There's a lot of like fear mongering, that's just, there's so much access to it. So by the time customers show up, I've told this story. We had a brand, this guy was a billionaire, sold like a blender company and had started a new company. And he showed up to our first call with a printout. So he was still kind of old school, but it was a printout from his Claude or his Chat GPT. And it was like, here's the 5 questions you asked this company. And they were all like steered towards negativity in a sense. They were like, hey, we heard, I've read this. And it was just like, and so you had to be really prepared to handle all of those objections. And not to say that our reps wouldn't be, prepared for that anyways, but the way that they showed up was very different than I've seen 5, 10, 15 years, before.
So
I guess the question is, doesn't the access change the way that buyers show up?
Yes and no. And maybe what I should have said is maybe not that sales has not changed that much. Human beings haven't changed that much. So let me challenge back and I'll give you an example. Let's say you're back in biblical times, right?
We could turn this into part interruption too. I got the next 40 minutes, we just go back and forth on the same topic. All right, no.
I love it. Well, I mean, here's the reason I bring that up. They say if a dog is hungry, it will eat.
Right.
It's the same thing. So if you're walking into town and you have a food cart and something, you're in biblical times and something, and you're trying to sell all this stuff. Let's say somebody's already stocked up for the week, right? And if you sell them anything, it's going to go bad. Like they don't have a problem. They
Right.
don't have a need. This could be the shiniest, coolest carrot, right? That you're trying
Right.
to sell them. That's what I mean by there's problems, there's needs, there's education. Like let's say there's some new innovative product like the wheel,
Right.
right? And you bring and say, "Hey, Rich, you've never seen this before. Here's a wheel." You're like, what's a wheel? You can
Right.
educate them on the product. It's cool. Do you see it's round, its features, functions, and all that kind of stuff. Why do I need a wheel? Like, why am I going to trade you my, woolly mammoth for
The
this
pain
wheel?
and the gain is still this, right? There has to be a pain or there has to be a
So-
want for gain.
And
Right.
then there's some people, like if you're an analyzer like me, that might ask a million questions. That might be looking, well, this wheel's bigger, this wheel's smaller. How do I?
Right.
And they may ask a bunch of questions. But I think what it's the visionary that might be like, hey, you know what? And if you don't know what we're talking about the types of buyers from buyer coding. If you're listening to this and you're like, what the heck are these?
Appreciate
guys
the plug.
Go to buyercoding.com and then you can catch yourself up. But
Right.
my point is, those type of individuals and human beings, I believe, have existed through time. And again, the access changes maybe the, like you said, leverage points. It could change the number of types of people and how we look at things.
Right.
I mean, they say our attention span has shrunk because we're in the microwave society and, social media. Those kind of things change. But that's what I meant by sales really hasn't changed that much. What I probably should have said is human beings haven't actually changed that much at a deep psychological level.
Yeah. No, I think I would, for the most part, agree with that piece. Even with the stuff that I've been teaching lately, it's less about inventing something new as it is about coaching something that's going to register, right? And you're going to remember, and then you're going to understand it, right? And it's simplified. One of my good buddies once said, back in, this was probably like 15 years ago, I was out in the field with them. We were selling today. And we were out going door to door. So yeah, this is probably past 15 years ago now, but I stopped him in the middle. We stopped, while we were actually going from business to business. And I said, why are you so good at this? I just don't get it. Like, why are you so good at this? And it wasn't like I wasn't good. He was just better than I was, way better than I was. And he said, Rich, you know what? I make things that seem difficult really easy to understand. And that was so mind-blowing to me, right? And I think that's because it's simple, right? But it's exactly, when you think about complex sales, when you think about even the most basic, being able to communicate it in a way that's compelling but easy to understand is how it resonates. And that's why people love stories, because stories are easy to understand. You can remember them, and then it resonates, right? And so I think that was my idea with building something in terms of training. It's like, how do we build something that's going to resonate, And obviously I use the example of love languages because the book's 20 years old, and, our kids are still know what they are, right? Speaking of books, I know that you're working on something, which I'm really excited about. And you're right. You're the referral guy. The first 5 referrals you sent me, I was like, hey, when does it flip to where I get to sell to somebody? But they were, legit. I was in need, or they were good conversations. I do think that you have really separated yourself in the market. And I think in a world where meetings are so hard to come by, quotas are, quota attainment's down, probably the worst in years that I've seen. I'd also say that the outbound game is such a challenge. I've been on record saying that someone that's selling more meetings or teaching someone how to, obtain more meetings, specifically around social selling, because people love to spend time online. They're selling, water in the desert, right? It's that important. Referrals being something that, and just so you know, my history with referrals is I've never cared about it. Even when I started teaching referrals, my thought process was always, I'm just going to go outwork somebody, right? I felt uncomfortable asking even from a buyer, right? I felt uncomfortable asking for a favor. Like I've always been, I'm going to stand on my own 2 feet. I don't need anything from anybody. Yes, I love having network, right? I consider myself someone that had a lot of friends at one point, but I never really wanted to lean on those people, right? To where today, if you ask me what's the one thing that you probably dropped the ball on that you would have started 20 years ago, it was building. I would say it was building a strong network that I could refer business to and refer back. So I believe it more now than ever. Tell me about this journey of writing about this.
Yeah. I want to go back to something that'll preface this, because you said something earlier, and I think I missed talking about this, about if I'm a brand new SDR getting in the game, or a new sales rep, new AE, something of that nature, and you just hit on it. The one thing that I would do, the financial aspect, but it's also just educating yourself so you are referable, building that network. Because I do have, we've met those youngsters that they're just impressive.
Right.
And you want to put them in front of your peers, and you want to see them succeed. So it doesn't matter if somebody has a lack of experience. The type of person they are matters, right? And so it's one of my 5 C's of referability, which is character. But when I think about this journey of even writing this book, it's called The Referral Effect. I'm working on the marketing plan. I'm on my 2nd manuscript. It's probably 90% done. The goal is to make a bestseller list, either USA Today or New York Times, and all of that. So I've been sort of slow rolling it because it takes time and effort to market and put your name out there and all of that. But
by the way, that's a low goal. I think you should probably reach for something a little bit higher.
Higher than New York Times bestseller.
Just going for New York Times bestseller.
Just on the first go around, hey, go big or go home, right? Mamba mentality. But
I love how you're not even like, hey, my goal is just for one person to walk away reading this book and turn into a referral monster and meet me 10 years later at one of my speaking engagements and say, hey, I know no one else bought this book, but this really changed my life. Instead of saying that, you're like, no, I want to be a #1 bestseller. That's definitely the Mamba mentality.
Hey, go big or go home. I love it. But what happened is actually about 2 weeks after so-called retirement. And I say so-called retirement is because, again, I didn't know for sure. Nobody believed. Actually, I take this back. Not nobody. I didn't believe that I would never work again. I just thought I was going to take a couple years off and then figure out what to do with my life. But 2 weeks into it, I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I'm having this depressive episode and all this stuff. And really what I found out with my coach is my brain was atrophying. I wasn't being productive. So it just changes when you go from 80-hour work weeks to nothing.
Right.
At the time, I think my kids were 6 months or and a year and a half, something of that nature. So there's no adult interaction. So short version is I got on the phone with her. She's like, hey, well, what are you good at? If you want to go out and do something and you want to spend time doing something for the greater good, what are you good at? And I go, there's really only 3 things in life God has gifted me in. Everything else in life I suck at. Just ask my wife. Can't cook, can't barely do anything, barely do the dishes. And but she knew this when we were dating, so it all worked out. But here's the point.
No surprise.
She starts laughing. And what was that?
You set the right expectations.
I'm very good at very good at setting expectations. I don't lie. But she laughed and she goes, what are the 3 things? And I said, speaking on stage, sales, and leadership/coaching. So she starts chuckling and I go, why are you laughing? And she goes, because all 3 of those are extremely monetizable. I said, great, let's get after it.
Wait, your wife said that?
Huh? No,
your wife or your coach? Okay. All right.
My coach at the time.
Yeah.
And so as we started thinking about this idea of full-time keynote speaking, going out and sharing the expertise that I have, the one thing that came up was many times the keynote speakers that get hired are either celebrities, the big time, athletes, rock stars, things of that nature, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I don't have the name and that gravitas behind me just based on, a regular Joe Schmo coming out of corporate America. So that's actually how the book came about, because she was like, go write a book. I was like,
Yeah.
authors get, keynote speaking, and you can get your expertise out there so people can see that value. So that's how the project started. And now it's become something where just getting my ideas out helped me realize the historical understanding of how I've built my businesses over the years. And I remember I said this once, and now it's become the staple, but I want to be clear if somebody hears me say this. What we calculated was and estimated is that I've done more than or close to 1 million cold calls in my career. The way that was done is because early on I started in telemarketing at 16 years old. I've done a lot of different jobs. I've gone door to door selling cell phones. That was actually my first official sales jobs, but I was in telemarketing for almost a decade. And so before we had auto dialers, I had to do 100 dials a day. But once you got auto dialers, you could do 500 to 1,000 dials very, very easily. Because people are like trying to do the math. How the heck have you done 1 million, cold calls? I didn't say I connected and had the conversations. You do 1 million dials. But here's the whole point of this. Because even after all that, when I started calculating all the money I've made, all the revenue that I've generated, 98% of that revenue has actually been generated through warm referrals. And the bigger the deals are, the more important it is to get walked into a room so you can gain access to the right people. The transactional side of things, if you're selling like a gift card, and back in the day I was selling like MCS phone service, like all these different things, like the prepaid cards. There was so many things I've sold, magazines, all these type of things. Those kind of things, yes.
Right.
I feel like cold calls worked back then, and probably even now for the transactional stuff.
Right.
I just haven't had as much success with big enterprise type of products and services.
Well, I think the headline there is 90% of the revenue that you booked came from actual real meetings, although you've done extensive amount of cold calling. And I think you also said on the front end of this, this is a channel, right? Like referrals is a channel, and it should be one of the most important channels. We're not saying, so this is not going to be clipped. We're not saying cold outbound is dead. We're not saying any of that. But let me ask you a different question, similar to the SDR question, because this is one I think that is probably going to make a big impact. So I'm a founder, okay? I'm really in founder-led sales motions right now. My network is my network, right? Like, I think at that stage when I'm building a company, sure, I can start trying to build a network at that point. I don't think it's ever too late. But how would a founder that's trying to come off of, founder-led sales implement something like the referral effect?
It's funny that, and interesting, and I want you to think about what you said. Founder-led sales, you put in a different category than the referral effect. And you said come out of it, that was kind of the words you used, into the referral effect. And so I think of the referral effect as a overarching philosophy, set of skills, behaviors. It is who we are. It is in effect 24/7 all the time. And founder-led sales, that is the referral effect, right? So we would create your network map, that sort of thing. The easy answer is if you're a founder out there and you want more revenue, you just hire me. I mean, that's obvious. me or Rich. I mean, the twofer, right? Like you just hire us both, and we'll get you in the room and
you bring in the meetings. I teach them how to
close the deal, right?
Right.
I'll tell you how they're thinking, how to get them to say yes.
Right.
But ultimately, that I do want to clarify the difference is that most people think it is a channel, but it's actually who we're being. With every conversation, are we showing up in their world? Are we having a conversation within the framework that I call LEA, learn, invest, ask? So learn about them first. And we're not talking about like a challenger sales discovery conversation where we show up with the point of view. That's not what we're referring to. I'm talking about just genuinely caring about another human being, learning about them, investing in what they need first. Like trying to at least figure out. Sometimes I try to help someone that I just meet. Right. And I just don't have the ability. But even the aspect of me trying puts me in good favor with that person that now earns me the right to ask for something in return. Because
Right.
sometimes that's just how it is. You may not get the reciprocity from that person specifically, but just always invest in people and you have earned the right to ask for something in return. And usually the ask that I have is an intro to someone else or a referral into somebody they know. That sort of thing is, I
You've read
think,
The Go Giver, right?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a practice that you do really well. If you haven't read The Go Giver, it talks about the idea that relationships should be equitable aren't really true when it comes to business. Like your goal should be to give more, and by giving more, some way, shape, or form, the karma of it all like comes back to you. But that's not the thought process. It's give more. And I think one of the interesting parts about our relationship is we got to a point where we were texting, every couple days, and you had gone from one role to the next. You took a little mini hiatus and decided to go back. And it was funny because we were talking, you were referring me, I was referring or I wasn't referring back to you because I didn't even know what you were selling, right? Like, and because you were so focused on, helping other people, and in some cases helping me, that I almost didn't even I couldn't return the favor almost because I didn't know what your new product was, and I think that's that's something you shouldn't have let it go a few months without me knowing what your new thing was, but that shows the lack of selfishness, right? And that go-giver mentality of I'm just going to connect people and do more for everyone else. And then by de facto, that's most likely going to return back to me
Well, the
some
truth
way.
of the matter, I want you to think about something in all of that. You are right. I don't actually try to give to get, but I will tell you something that I'll challenge you on, which is this idea of investing and giving. The way just life works, I just genuinely believe this. If you invest, usually when you invest, it comes with a return. Well, a return is usually greater than the investment. Now, you're spot on. It doesn't come from the person you're investing in all the time.
Right.
But in general, if the more you give, the more you'll probably get regardless. But it is a mentality of I'm just going to go give more, give more, give more, give more, and just know that things will happen in return. That's one. But I'll also tell you that you did actually try to return the favor. I just wasn't available at the time because as a speaker, as a trainer, you
Right.
actually did invite me to come teach the team and all of that. I just wasn't available. So the
Yeah.
truth of the matter is it did in and of itself sort of return unexpectedly.
Yeah.
But
Well, you
if
know
you think
what? I
about it,
didn't even think of it that way because I thought we were getting hooked up. I know my team needed to work on this, right? The
yeah.
go to network and referral strategy. And obviously we wanted more meetings. So I was looking at it like we were getting hooked up. I'd be remiss to not bring this up because I'm definitely impressed by it. And, it's a goal of mine to, get, I don't know if it's going to be a retirement plan or it's going to be an early retirement plan or it's not even a retirement plan. I don't know what you call it when you're still working, but
Yeah.
you're, you have flexible schedule.
Yeah, flexibility and choice. We'll call it that.
Yeah. Eventually, I'd like to do more keynote myself and continue to do coaching and training. But I was really impressed by your journey into the TEDx experience. I'm sure you've talked about this, but what was your biggest takeaway from the whole experience? And if you guys don't know, what was the country that you flew out to?
I went out to Czechia, out to Prague.
Out to Prague, was invited to be a TEDx speaker, showed up looking like $1,000,000. If you haven't watched it, I'm sure it's available on YouTube. Your YouTube, do you have one?
It will be coming out. So that's the other thing
All
is
right.
as we go through this process, all
Okay.
socials will start to come up.
So anyways, it's available, but I suggest you go watch it. But what was the biggest, takeaway from the experience?
Oh man, such a great question. First and foremost, for those that, well, no one would know this, but I want to explain doing a TED Talk / TEDx, it's hard to actually get in because you have to apply to most places or know someone. And that second part of knowing someone, what most of you would never know, is that Rich is the one that introduced me to the individual that introduced me to the organizer of that TEDx.
The
And
referral
so
effect, baby.
I'm telling you,
Let's
it's
go.
even how I got the TEDx to begin with is through the referral effect.
Right.
And so people would be like, well, Stephen, don't you have local TEDx's? Sure. Everything works out how it's supposed to because this organizer, oh my gosh, the stage was amazing. He's a speaker coach, that sort of thing. And one of the biggest things that I took away was the precision in which every word, every tonality, everything, I practice that type of stuff anyways, but this is to a very different level. Because in a typical keynote, there is usually more interaction with the audience. You can ask questions back and forth. My style is to do exercises, have
Right.
banter, those sorts of things. In a TEDx, it truly is, majority of the time, very quiet. The thing that I learned is that because it's mainly for online audiences, you have a very small in-person audience. It's different when you are trying to manage the expectations of online versus in person. And literally, the amount of work that goes into every line, trying to fit it in, trying to put everything together, even the intonation, even understanding how would the global audience take a certain word? Because again, I was in Europe
Right.
at the time. Like all of these sorts of things, we put a lot of work into it. And even the day before, I was going to write a post, and maybe I'll utilize this to be able to explain it. The way that I did my practice was unique to how I was doing the TEDx. I had the organizer, we were in a room the night before, and I had him just pick out a random slide. And I would literally just go with the talk track for that slide.
So
to
he was
where-
coaching you through it.
well, the point, yeah, he was, but he was just quizzing me because the point was most people go through their talk from top to bottom. We were doing, pop a slide. Like, hey, put a random slide on. I just start with the actual script for that slide. We might go to slide 13, then he goes to slide 7, then he goes to slide, 20, then he goes to 1. And it was just a very, very different way that I practiced for it to make sure that when I got on stage, I have practiced, but the difference is when you do a keynote, it has to sound like it's the first time, like you're just having a conversation. It can't sound recorded.
So Stephen is basically saying you have to be a pro. So if you think you're gonna
No, I'm saying you have to practice and freaking put in the work.
Okay.
There is like
what's
Yeah.
come of it? Anything like interesting,
Yeah.
exciting? Any opportunities?
Oh, it will. So, like I said, everything happens for a reason, but I'm supremely grateful for any opportunity. First and foremost, like I said, it's hard to get these TEDx's and TED Talks to begin with. But what I didn't even realize going into it is that there's something called editor's picks with TEDx's. And TED Corporate, the way that I understand it, picks less than 0.1% to put on their editor's pick, editor's playlist, which is like, again, 0.1% of all of the TEDx's that are done. And I just found out a couple of weeks ago that mine got picked.
What?
And so, like, you cannot make this stuff up. And
You
so
you heard it here first. So on the front end of this call, when I'm glazing you as one of the best speakers I've ever seen, there's validation. What is it called? The TEDx.
it's an editor's
cut.
editor's pick.
Pick. Wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool, man. Congratulations.
I appreciate
That's awesome.
that, man.
You
So-
and as again, you heard it here first on Read the Room with Rich, where we drop. What do we drop? Damn it.
We drop news. You heard it here first. Hard hitting. I love it.
Bombshell sales news. You know what I'm going to start doing is like whenever anyone does a new job, a post, and they're like someone who's of significance or any type of player, I'm going to start talking about it on the podcast, like the free agency signings.
You and I talked about this, that you were going to do something with your LinkedIn post, and you started doing it
Reviewing post.
or yeah,
Yeah.
something of that nature. But that would be fun. Is like, here's who's on the market, here's what's not. That would actually be kind of funny. Here's who got traded.
Yeah.
So and so got moved to. Oh, that'd be awesome.
So I want to get into a little bit of something different. So we're going to switch gears. Off the clock. I mean, obviously, I know you're a dad. You're married. But outside of your domestic duties, what do you like to do?
I mean, for those listening on audio form, you may not be able to see it, but anybody watching on video, I hope it's very apparent what I like to do in my spare time. But man, I like to hoop whenever I can get it. If I have free time, I want to be on the court, dribbling, shooting, catching a game. I don't care where it's at. But right now, I probably only get a chance to recreationally play maybe once a week. If that, it's just been difficult with time and again, kids and things of that nature. But
I can't
honestly,
wait to get you. I can't wait to get you on the court next time you're in town.
oh,
I
you're
have
gonna
a
be
visual.
like,
Hold on. I have a visual of you trying to guard me at the 3-point line and me hitting you with this little hezzy and then going behind the back to the left and just looking back. It makes me feel like how I was when I was looking at the amount of impressions that my podcast with Richard, which we are going to plug, What Makes You Tick with Richard Washington and Tolu. When I would watch the amount of impressions my podcast had versus yours. So I envision those two things.
I need to go check how that's going. I may need to go promote that one. So as you were saying that, because I know we met in person, here's who I actually envision if we were to think about it from the NBA Finals.
Here comes the short joke.
Yeah, you'd be Jose Alvarado. But did you just see that play? I don't know when this is going to air, but man, he just went off last night. So that is not a knock, but like the dude is fire. And I'd probably be like Wemby, or we'll upgrade you. You're Jalen Brunson, where he hit that three in Wemby's face, to clutch. So
we're more like JJ Barrera and Barea and LeBron.
No, I think it's better to say Jose and Wemby. That just makes it now.
But I use that because it's a joke that Barrera put the clutches on LeBron in the finals, and Dallas ended up winning.
That's so funny. Yeah, that's so true. Well, the funny thing, originally he was the first person I thought of, but I was like, he's retired, he's doing all that, so people may not, remember who he is. But that is actually the first person that I thought of. I was like, it's yay.
So Stephen, people are gonna want to find you. Where is the best way to find you and book you? How can they find you?
Love it, man. StephenOommen.com. And for those that don't know how to spell my name, Rich, it's Stephen with a PH, and the last name always throws people off. It's double O, like OOMM, as in Mary, E as in elephant, N as in Nancy. So StephenOommen.com, or hit me up on LinkedIn. I have open DMs. Whether we're connected or not, I'd love to meet people and just network. But again, my calendar's online. You can find me or my team. Somebody will reach out to you. The funny thing about the website, it's only because of this editor's pick that sort of lit a fire under me to get some of those types of things ready. Because I wrote a post, this was probably like 2 weeks ago, because I do get asked the question, why don't you have a website? Or do you have marketing collateral that you can send me?
Right.
And when somebody asks me that, because remember, 99% of people that I meet is through referrals, I just look at them and I said, and I go, no, I don't. And they get kind of quiet, and I ask the question, and I go, how did we get on this call?
Right.
And the light bulb goes on every time where they go, oh my gosh, someone introduced us. And I said, so the very thing that I teach your team is that in spite of everything, whether you have the best technology, whether you have the best marketing, whether you have the best whatever, because I have been in organizations where sellers consistently say, oh, the competitor has way better marketing. The competitor has this, the competitor has that. But at the end of the day, it is about us. And so that's when the light bulb moment happens, because they see that the very thing that I teach is what I live by, right? And so I've been lucky enough where I haven't had to have a website, a bunch of marketing material, but I've just continuously networked and been able to get in rooms simply because of that.
Love it, man. Thank you. One of the things I wanted to touch on is if you notice, I asked you a question, and I asked you that question with intentionality, which was, what's the hardest part about what you do today? And by asking that question, my real goal was I had a good feeling what type of buyer you were and what what your buy code was. But I asked that question because I wanted to confirm it. And, I think I wanted to share it because I think it's a very powerful question. You're going to hear me ask this question a lot of times to our guest. And what happens after that question is really eye-opening. And I think you mentioned it later on in the pod that you do analyze and you somewhat overthink things too as well. And I think that's an important kind of call out that, now anytime that I'm presenting to you, so anyone that's going to be selling to Stephen, just know that he's going to read through the fine print. He's going to want data to support his decision. He's going to expect some time in between your calls and conversations because he's going to review everything 47 times. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting, the way that you answered it. It really validated kind of what I was thinking the entire time.
What's interesting is with analyzers, there's different, I like the word modalities of how people analyze. For me, I will not read all the fine print. I'll get someone else to read all the fine print for me if I needed to. But right. I do expect calls, and I'm very risk averse. And I think that is one of the character traits with an analyzer. And so I expect someone to have the answers. If someone just sends me data ahead of time, then I get overwhelmed because I'm very much like a driver. I am an analytic, but only when I ask for it, because I have to let my brain think about all the areas that I have fear or risk. So even different analyzers, you have to understand their style, their communication, those sorts of things, which is why I love buyer coding, because it kind of walks you through how to think about all of these things. And then there's the aspect of, depending on my mood, if I'm caffeinated up, I might be more of a visionary, right? You never know.
Yeah, you can't run from the predominant one though. But listen, I really, really appreciate you jumping on, Stephen. As much as we get a chance to text back and forth, we don't get to do this very often. So thank you for spending the time with me.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, brother.
All right, buddy. Thank you for watching today's episode. And if you found value in it, do me a favor, like, follow, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. If you want to learn about buyer coding, head on over to my website, www.buyercoding.com. And then if you're ready to introduce decision-centric selling to your organization, our sales methodology built around understanding how your customers make decisions, removing decision risk, and building decision confidence, please send me a DM if you're interested in booking the decision-centric selling workshop. And then ultimately, if you want to become a sponsor of the show, please reach out to me at rich@buyercoding.com. Until next time, don't just read your prospect. Remember to read the room. Thanks again, guys.